you can spend a lifetime. Can you imagine 9 years in a cell? All I did was research, study, and look into all this stuff. 9 solitudinal years. It was like, better than being a monk in a monastery. I mean, and something that could keep me entertained and literally stimulated all those years. Plus, I had all those clients around me, locked up with me. So I was able to use it like a laboratory. I could begin to experiment. I could begin to see how things worked. Obviously, if a guy had a Mercury-Mars affliction in their chart, I wasn't worried about a car accident. Nobody's driving in prison. But Mercury-Mars would be potentially that, see? But I knew that Mercury rules communication and Mars can be anger and fighting. And I would warn them against that. I'd say, be careful. You could easily end up in an altercation with somebody in an argument. Mercury-Mars affliction, anger, right? Or Saturn-Mars, Saturn and Mercury could be the same thing, but Saturn could be stabbed in the back. You know what I mean? Saturn is that kind of energy. So you need to. In prison, I began seeing, then pretty soon the guards were coming to me for charts. Pretty soon the psychologists were coming to me for charts, and they'd pay me, and they weren't supposed to, but they would, they'd pay me. So here comes our last student. So when I was going through those years, let me open the door. Here she is. Good, I know you got a long drive. So I was telling how in prison how I had uncovered this connection between earthquakes and between, I was going to give her one of those here. What I glam just now, the charts from the earthquake. How I uncovered the relationship between quakes, and this is the Alaskan earthquake, the Great Alaskan, 9.2 on the Richter scale. One of the worst quakes in the history of the world. It's the most powerful quake ever occurred on this planet that we know of, since we're keeping records of them. And I was just showing how the cross was set up in heaven. Saturn was opposing Uranus and Pluto. Venus was opposing Neptune. Perfect cross, and then you have what? Bam. You have this full moon, 7 degrees Libra, 7 degrees Aries, exact full moon placed right on top of that cross. So all I'm trying to show you is that there are a lot more involved in astrology. It's so much more, and you'll get into it. And I recommend a book. It's called A to Z Horoscope Maker and Delineator. I recommend it because it's a collection of so much knowledge and information that you can just spend months and months going through it. And there's a lot of times you'll be looking up something like what food is related to Jupiter, for example. You'll find out there are certain foods that are what metals, what stones, what foods are associated with Sagittarius, for example. Well, Sagittarius is a horse. They got horseradish in there. The A to Z Horoscope Maker and Delineator, and it was published many years ago, and it's kind of like an anthology of a lot of stuff. And it's got all sorts of things. You can spend, and when I was in prison for 9 years, this book was like thick, and it was like, man, there was so much in there, and it was like a wealth of stuff that you wouldn't find anywhere else. And there's a lot of stuff that you can use for kind of research. And it's a thick book. And it's been republished, and it's out there now.
How did you get these books in prison?
I ordered them from my monies that I made. Yeah, and people, as I said, paid me to do charts. Sometimes an inmate would pay me, and I would say, look, order this book for me. And then it would get shipped in, And so, I had a huge collection of books when I came out of prison, which, unfortunately, a lot of them were stolen from a guy who was a friend of mine. And that's a long story. I'm not going to go there. But anyway, I had a big collection. And the bottom line is that when you're studying astrology, you're going to find all sorts of stuff. And some people I don't recommend. Some people are just a lot of words and nothing, no meat. You feel like you read it and you say, he may be a writer and he may have some talent, but he doesn't know much about really anything except how to blow a lot of smoke. This guy, Mark Edmund Jones, is one of them I don't recommend. Some of them are really gifted people in the field that really know astrology, and the textbook I gave you is a good textbook. Alan Roya, he's good. He's got a lot of good understanding of it. But anyway, so what I'm saying, I was talking about how this happened on Good Friday, the 9th hour of daylight. It happened exactly 9th hour, which is when Christ was crucified at 9th hour daylight on Good Friday, and we celebrate that day. It's Good Friday. And of course, the earth quaked when that happened, and the rocks rent when he was crucified. So there's another scripture that Christ said that if you did this, the rocks themselves would cry out against you. The rocks themselves, he said, would cry out against you. What's that mean? It means that all communication on earth is going on between mineral, plant, and animal. The mineral kingdom is also communicating with us. We don't know it. I think there's something to precious stones, I think some people go crazy with it all, and but it's okay. They may know more than I do about all that. If you look at some of the masters, Yogananda talked about the power of stones, and certain birth stones you should wear if you're a certain birth sign. So there may be a lot to that. So the rocks themselves would cry out against you if you did these things. That's what Christ said. He's saying that he withered the fig tree. That's the plant kingdom. He walked by it and it was fruitless, and he withered it. How can you wither a fig tree unless you can communicate with it? So when he was crucified, of course, what happened? The earth quaked, the rocks ripped apart. It says the rocks rent apart. So Ella Fitzgerald showed that the power of the word, the sound, can shatter a crystal glass. What is crystal glass? It's rocks, basically minerals. And so it's vulnerable to the higher frequencies of love and sound. Okay, Jericho's walls came tumbling down in the Old Testament. That's another story. How did they do it? They blew horns and they made a lot of noise, and the walls came crumbling down. Sounds crazy, incredible. But so I'm a little off subject, but that's the way I do, I guess.
Yes.
Yes.
In that case, for example, that would be the transit of the planet
Good for you.
place in Alaska. So
You-
the thing, how do you make
That's
that
right.
chart?
That would be drawn at the moment of the earthquake.
Place.
In Anchorage, Alaska. I drew it for Anchorage. Alaska's not that vast. I mean, wherever you go, it's going to come up. But that was what. In other words, the moon was rising and just starting to rise in the eastern angle. The sun was setting. The 9th hour daylight was setting. Now in Alaska, because you've got latitudinal differences in the way things are, you can have 24 hours of daylight in Alaska. This is March. I mean, I've been in St. Petersburg with my wife in Russia. It's 12 o'clock at night. We're sitting in a cafe. It's still light out. You know what I mean? It's because your northern latitudes changes things, right? But this chart was drawn for the exact moment of the earthquake. I gave you a handout. What do I do with all those? I just had them in my hand. I was going to give it here. This is maybe right. No? I'm going to give her one. Oh, good, thank you. So this is for you. This is the earthquake chart itself, and huh? Sure. Yeah, it's not a good one. Yeah. Okay, there you go. Okay. All right. So, okay, and so very quickly, I'm just going to show you a couple things. The class we're going to be doing is on prediction, and that's what this next course is going to be. And some of you already are signing up, I know, and I really appreciate it. We're going to have enough people, I'm sure. The lost keys to the astrological forecasting. Basically, the scriptures, I shared this with you before. Let no man judge you, neither meat nor drink or the Sabbath or the new moons are a shadow of things to come. The new moons are a shadow of things to come, and that's what they were trying to tell you. And they were celebrating Sabbaths and new moons. Okay, for many years in practicing astrology, I've been using techniques which had a very high degree of accuracy and which worked to reveal the accuracy and power of the astrological technique in predicting events. But even with the same exceptions and deviations from the expected results, I would always have, there were always exceptions which I couldn't understand until I began to understand it. Being an author and lecturer with years of doing astrological work in the radio, I used to do it on KIEV in California, KEST in San Francisco, WROL in Boston. I used to do astrological work on radio for years, and I'd have to get their information quickly on the computer, and I'd give readings on the air. And so the anomaly of aberrations of my predictive work to be within acceptable range of acceptance and permission, but it also left me with a quandary of why sometimes the predictive technique seemed infallible and other times it was inaccurate. And that's when I came across the technique I'm going to teach you guys. And by that, we talked about this, I think, before. Love frees us from the curse of the law. The law is what? Astrological laws. Those are laws. Karma, what's that? It's laws. You did this, you got to have this. This is the result of your behavior. But love frees us from that curse. What does that mean? First of all, loving yourself, and then loving others. In this you shall know if you're what? My disciples or not. In that you do what? You have love one for another. Simple, isn't it? Okay? So, okay. I talked about this a little bit, the 10 years in prison. Yeah, nice thing to talk about. Okay. So, my experimental lab, I talked about that. Upon release, I wrote the book. And then I go into why it works, and I'm not going to spend time with this now. This will be part of the course. And I show you the scriptures that also will show you how powerful the scriptures understood astrology. And eclipses, by the way, are very powerful. You'll know what to do with those. And this is important even now in what you're studying right now. If the root of the tree doesn't forecast it, then the event cannot be foretold. In other words, the chart has a root meaning that is not to be deviated from by a new moon influence, a transit or progression. It doesn't matter. If the natal chart does not promise something, then the secondary influence, which would be we call it secondary influences being the progressions, the transits, they will not make it happen. And let me tell you what I mean by that. If you, let's say, you go to an astrologer, and they say, oh my God, you've got Saturn moving over your sun right now. And life's going to be difficult, right? That's typical. Saturn, Satan, the devil. But if Saturn's not really, if the sun in your chart is not afflicted, and it's making great aspects to everything in that chart, nothing bad's going to come out of that. You see what I'm getting? Because the root of the tree doesn't promise something bad, because the sun's at that point and it's not afflicted. Now if the sun was, like in my chart for example, squaring Mars, okay, and Mercury, and it's in that square, and my Saturn got on top of that, then I would be, oh, you better keep your mouth tight, Watson, and watch your temper. You know, and you be careful with your back, because sun rules your back, okay? Don't injure yourself, right? Mars muscle injuries, Saturn. And I've had things happen to me in my life which I'd go to my chart later and I'd say, my God, no wonder. I had a spasm one time in my back. Anybody ever had a back spasm? I mean, it was like, well, everything just locks up on you. And it was so bad. My daughter was only about 3 years old. And we were home alone, and I couldn't move. I hit the floor. I was down. I couldn't get up. And I crawled the best I could to try to get to the bed. And it was the most anguishing. I didn't know what hit me. But it's like somebody took a baseball bat across my back. And everything had spasmed, my muscles. And little Larissa gets up on that bed when I finally got up, and she puts her hands on me. I swear to God, like she knew what she was doing. Put her hands on my back and just sat there like she was meditating. And I made it go away. You know, I know it sounds crazy. But I mean, I think she was healing me. She didn't, at that age, she even knew. But the point I'm getting at is that with a Mars, anybody's got Mars like I do, Mars sun. The sun rules your heart. Mars can mar or injure. I had a heart attack 5 years ago. Okay, that potential's in that chart. So if I had been brought up with this knowledge in early years and put into let's say a frame of mind to be more careful in what I maybe eat and what I'm putting in my body, I wouldn't have had it. But the whole point I'm getting at is this, that there's so much in there in these charts. When I talk about Mars squaring my sun, Mars in Pisces rules your feet. We're back to the signs. The sign rules part of the body. Okay, the Pisces rules your feet. Aquarius your ankles, and your calves. You know, you go up your body. It's like that. You know, Capricorn rules your knees. Sagittarius rules the thighs. Okay, and Libra, Scorpio rules the sexual organs, and Libra rules the reins, the kidneys, that area, and you come all the way through the signs. Virgo rules the bowels and the intestinal area, and then Cancer rules what? Well, no, when Cancer, Leo rules the back, Cancer rules the breast, and the stomach as well, part of the stomach, and then you come on up to Gemini rules the lungs, and Taurus rules the throat and the neck, and Aries, of course, rules the head. So, you know, I was born with Mars in Pisces, and nobody could have ever told me I have feet problems. Never would I believe that. I was a runner, ran in high school. I was one of the fleetest, best runners around, and you know, I always never. I used to read that stuff, and oh well, I'm immune to this. I'll never. But when you get to a certain age, all of a sudden these things can start to happen. You can have little weaknesses there, and it manifests into problems. It's raining out. Okay. Y'all get a car wash tonight free. So what I'm trying to say is that when you start to put it all together, and you start to see all these relationships, and you start grasping you'll be doing a chart and you'll see somebody has Mars in Aries, afflicted maybe. Like my daughter, I told you, she calls me about her boyfriend. I says he's had a head injury. Do you remember I told you that? And she didn't know that. And I said he's got arthritis because he had Saturn affliction real bad. Rules skeletal frame in the bones. It was afflicting Mars. So I said, you know, and he also, you know, shouldn't drink. And I told her all these things. And that night she's rubbing his hair and he's laying on the couch next to her, you know, and she's rubbing her. Says, do you have a head injury? And she couldn't find it. And he said, yeah, I had my scalp almost ripped off from my ear all the way over the ear. I got stitches. Then she went on, do you have arthritis? How could you know? What's going on here? He said, I used to play almost semi-pro tennis, and now I can't anymore because I've got arthritis in my hands. So here I am in Florida, and she's calling me up and asking me a question about a chart. I mean, that's how accurate it is. But it's only as accurate as you are. And how do you get accurate? You start putting it, you know, thinking astrologically. You spend your time studying. Study, what scripture says, study and show thyself worthy. Okay? And when I was studying astrology in prison, there was all these other temptations. Palmistry. I thought, boy, that's interesting because it's related a little bit to astrology. The mount of the moon, you know, and I mean, I keep looking at all this stuff. And then handwriting analysis. I thought that was exciting too. So, but I kept trying to stay like this, like, you know, put blinders on. I didn't want to get sidetracked. I wanted to be the best astrologer around. I wanted to be the best. I didn't want to be distracted by other things that would take me away from what my heart was about. That's what I want you guys to do. I want you to be passionate about this and get into it, stay with it. If it's not coming too fast, don't worry about it. You got the rest of your life to do this. You can be laid up in a hospital and the nurses will be over at your bed, do my chart, do my chart. Seriously, they will. I've been there. I've laid on my back in a hospital and everybody wanted the chart to find out I'm an astrologer. You know? So, you know, wherever you are, you'll find that there's a demand for you. And people are interested, and especially if you're good, if you know what you're doing and you can be accurate with it. So, anyway, enough of the inspiration, but I want to get the fire in you guys, you know, and don't get discouraged. There's not, you know, think of what the word is, discouraged. It means you've lacked courage. Huh? Who wants to be a person that doesn't have courage? Don't be discouraged. You know, go forward and do it. Master it. You got a lifetime. Huh? I'm 75 years old. How old are you? Have you got some years yet to study and do this stuff? Of course you do. You know, you don't have to think, oh, it's too late. I should have done this when I was in my 20s. Baloney. I was in my mid-30s when I started.
I have a question for you, a different question. You said before Mercury
The what?
Mercury rules the speech. But does Mercury rule the cognitive will? For instance, if you want to study and you are not very smart, is Mercury involved there or not?
Oh boy, that one's a hard one. Usually you can very often see a person's ability to grasp knowledge in a chart. For example, okay,
The third house,
well, third house, Mercury, Gemini.
Gemini, right?
But let me tell you why. You know, you can see a lot in a chart. You can see, I did a chart. One of my clients took me to a woman who had a child that had, what's it called, this, where they stop communicating in a way.
Autistic.
Autism, yeah.
Autism.
Yeah. And, you know, we met. And I did it, and I saw, you know, what, there was something really wrong with this child. Turns out she's a black woman. She's a beautiful woman, and she's starting up a, she wanted to start her own school for autistic children, but I didn't know that when I went there. I just said, you know, you've got work to do, and your work is essentially to improve the health of mankind on some level. I didn't know what I was talking about until she told me what she was about. But her child had autism. And she is one of these regal women. I mean, she is so amazing. You meet her, she's like it's like a queenly look, you know, she has that. And very well off too. And she told me, she said, you know, I don't expect you to see my son in my chart, but she says, I do know my mission in life. And she said, that's what I'm here for, is I'm trying to do what no one else is doing right, and that's take care of these autistic children and do it in a way that's helped them come out of this autism. And she told me stories about how she's using animals to bring that forth. And she says these schools should have animals. They should have communication that these kids can have with something beyond human, because it opens them up. You know, she's an amazing woman. But the point being, you asked me a question, and the question is, when I'm doing a chart, Mercury to me, afflicted, it makes it difficult sometimes to learn. I had Mercury afflicted. Mercury rules speech and communication. I stuttered till I was 12 or 13 years old. Very bad stutter problem. And Mars will do that, kind of. Mars the speech, Mars, Mercury afflictions. People that have Saturn Mercury afflictions very often are slow to learn. The reason is Saturn is causes impediment. It slows things down. It also very often will make a cursing person. Mercury, Saturn. They'll be quick to accuse, and they're self-judgmental as well as accusing outward. One of the things you'll find in life is that people who are accusing others all the time are guilty themselves, very guilty. The more guilt they carry, the more they find others to blame. You know, the typical person in prison, I didn't do it, or I'm not supposed to be here, society made me do it, or alcohol made me do it, or drugs made me do it. I had nothing to do with it, you know what I mean? It wasn't me, you know? So that's self-denial, right, is real apparent. What is Saturn's denied? He denied Christ how many times? 3 times? Satan, the devil, you know? That was Peter, denied. So when you see Saturn in a chart, you'll hear people, Mercury afflictions, they'll say, I can't do this, I can't, because they deny themselves, they deny it. They're self-denying all the time. Their speech is self-denying. It's often, and I'm praying that I'm not talking about somebody's chart in here, and they say, oh my God, Ron, you're talking about me. Well, you may have that in your chart, but you may have overcome it. You may have grown out of that. You may have grown above it, because that's what we're all here to do. I talk about myself, I have Mars Mercury affliction. You know? It's
For instance, now we have new generations of young people
yes.
that really suffer of ADD and ADHD, and they cannot focus.
That's right.
This is a learning trouble.
It is.
It's a learning disorder. Huge time, a majority of them. So I was thinking, where do we see this? Is it Mercury the one that will show this?
I think, but when I was young, they didn't have a category of this.
Exactly, the disorders were.
But I think I would have been diagnosed today with it.
Okay.
My Mercury Mars affliction. I used to feel like when I was young, it was like there was always static in here and conflict inside me. And I didn't understand it, you know what I mean? And it was confusing me a lot. And I wasn't the best student. I was always good at whatever I wanted to get really interested in, then I'd be good at it. But if, as far as the per rote stuff, had a hard time with math. And my stepdad, he was the only dad I knew though, very abusive towards me. He'd sit me down at the table to do math problems, and if I had a problem and challenge, he'd smack me, you know? He just didn't like it that I couldn't figure things out, you know? Math was always a challenge for me. And then I think it was just emotional problems I had as a young man that produced those things. I was good at writing. I was good at comprehension and, you know, anything to do with, yeah.
I had always a memory problem, always. For me to memorize things.
I'm the same. I am the same. I could have had jobs if I could have memorized sales scripts, but I couldn't do it. If I can't come from my heart, that's why even, you never see me with notes. I can't even stand up and talk with people with, I can try to keep an outline and try to keep me on it, but I try to stay on the line.
So this memory is Mercury. It's not,
Good for you.
it's memory. It's Mercury memory.
It is. But let's look at another aspect of the mind. That's Jupiter.
Okay.
Because Jupiter rules higher mind, higher consciousness. It rules religion, philosophy, deep thinking, profound thinkers. And I have a grand trine, my sun to Jupiter, and in my chart I have a grand trine. And that powerful, Jupiter's powerful in my chart. So it gives me the ability, I've always had an ability to, for some reason I could memorize scriptures and don't know why. I can't remember, I can't learn a song from start to finish. All my life I've never been like that. And she'd find that impossible to believe. I remember a guy in prison trying to teach me a song. He was a guitar player and he had a good voice and he'd sing. And he was trying to teach me a song. I don't remember, it was a, see, I can't remember the song, that's how good my memory is with that. But I couldn't get through it, I couldn't go through it. I couldn't do it, he couldn't figure it out. I said, how can you not do this, Ryan? I said, I don't know, you know? And with names, I'm rough on names too. You know, my wife's my memory. Say, what's that person's name? I forgot. You know, and I'm embarrassed to say it. I don't remember. You know, but the point is that that's all mercurial things. People who have strong Mercuries, non-afflicted Mercuries, that are really good strong Mercuries, are very good with trivia. You watch these people on TV come on these contests with trivia contests. I'm amazed at them. They know all this little stuff that's not important, but they know it. But yet their minds work like that. Mine's the opposite. But yet, why I know scriptures that I haven't even read or studied, I know them. I can quote scriptures and I don't even know that I know them. You know what I'm saying? So that's Jupiter stuff. You know, that's the prophet, Jupiter, Zeus, you know. Mercury is fundamental learning. It's trivial stuff and all that stuff, you know. And Geminis are generally good at it. I'm a Sag, so that doubles the intended. You see? Yes, for sure, honey. Thank you. Yeah, any help I can get is always good. She keeps me on course too. Huh? What do you need?
I need an eraser.
It was right there. Maybe right. Look behind there. I'll get it. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. So. Okay. So what are we going to do, Elena? What's the next thing you're going to do? I know, I just asked what we're going to do, so I know where we're going.
I'm not doing anything.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to have me go somewhere with something. All right. So the main thing to understand is for this class, I spent a lot of time trying to teach you the meaning of the aspects. And when I talk about a stress aspect, I'm talking about a square, an opposition, a semi-square, 150-degree aspect, okay? Quincunx it's called. These aspects I use a lot because it'll teach you real quickly to begin to assimilate and understand what these energies mean. Now in your book, in your workbook that I gave you, you notice that I have some pages that are all grand trines. Remember those? Mm-hmm. And the grand trines are E's of flow and purpose between those energies. Kind of an expansion of their energies and the ability to use them in a more positive way. And so one of the things that people often think as they listen to all these talks about squares and oppositions is, my gosh, Ron, I wish I didn't have any squares in my chart. I wish I didn't have any oppositions. I wish I didn't have any afflictions in my chart. I say, don't ever wish that. Because without those, you'll never amount to much in life. Because they challenge you to grow. They force you to grow. They constantly agitate, and they cause conflicts that make you become stronger. It's like, you know, you go to the gym to what? To rest? No, you go to the gym to lift weights, to get strong, to challenge your body, to put it under stress. The same thing with these stress aspects. The more you have, the more you're able, you either do one or two things. You crumble under it in life, or you become very strong. You see? So that's what these aspects are for. They're here to teach you something. Remember we did that before with the cross I put up there with all the meanings of the planets with each other. Those aspects are there to teach you something. They're not there just to punish you. They're there to say, look, this is what you need to learn in life. You came into this planet for this purpose. And this is the message that I'm trying to bring back to you. So when we're doing these charts, you know, especially Mars in a chart, especially Mars, is an action energy. If it's squaring something in your chart, it's going to force you to action. If it's opposing something in your chart, it's going to force you to action. Okay? If you have a Saturn affliction in a chart, it's trying to force you to something else. What would you think that might be?
To be more disciplined.
Good for you. Absolutely. Patient and discipline. That's what it's the two key things it's trying to teach. And it'll demand it from you. It'll demand it. So those are the messages of these planets. They're trying to say something. You know, this is where you need to learn the most. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a child and we did their chart and we said, this is the area this child has to grow the most. Of course, with children, they're not going to listen to the parent because the parent might want to sit them down and say that, and they'd say, yeah, no. But, you know, a prophet is never with honor in his own country or in his own home. Very often that's the case. You know, it doesn't work very well. But here again, let's kind of look at some of these aspects, and I will just kind of show you a couple things real quick on this. The next course we're going to do. Okay. These are some of the charts which are actually going to show. This is what I'm going to be teaching you: how to find this progressed moon, how to find transit Saturn real quick in a chart, and how to find the new moons in the chart, and how they predict and how they create prophetic things. These are all events in life that have been very dramatic. In this case, I think it was Bin Laden's chart, if I recall right. But we'll be doing that. The first rule, find a new moon. I'll teach you. That's very easy to do. It's every month you can find a new moon, right? And then we look for the progressed moon. And then you're going to look for the transit Saturn. Once you learn those three things, then I'll teach you one more thing, and that's how to add one more aspect to all this, and that'll be Jupiter. And so I'm going to get out of this, but this is the main course we're going to be working on next. What I want to do now is I want to take you to another. If I can get there, I may have to unplug this to do this. This doesn't work very smoothly for me for some reason. I think there's some reason. Let me